mobile home parks, RV parks, and golf courses have like some of the highest depreciation out of all commercial real estate assets because they're mostly land improvements. So you're able to depreciate typically 70 to 80% of the purchase price. And for mobile home parks, that's over like 17 years. So if you buy something for $1 million, you can take 700,000 and spread that out over 17 years. And that's how much that you can add to your P&L as a phantom expense to offset your taxable income every year, approximately. Obviously, this is subject to change with tax laws and things like that, but that's how it is right now.
If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randall. Let's dive in.
All right. We're talking mobile home parks today with a massive operator, Andrew Keel of the Keel team. He's one of the top 100 owner of manufactured housing communities. He has over 3,000 units or lots under management, and he's got over 40 different parks across the United States. So great conversation. If you are looking at mobile home parks as an investment opportunity, I know that he has offerings from time to time, and you can go straight to the show notes and reach out to him through the show notes. Again, Wealth of Knowledge has a ton of information. We talk about underwriting. We talk about how to find sellers and some basic tools that you can use, and some of the things that you need to do as far as due diligence goes when you're looking at parks. So it's a great conversation. If you're getting value out of the show, please go on, rate and review, gives us a better rating and helps us bring on guests just like Andrew. And without further ado, let's jump in, talk to him. Here we go. Andrew, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us. I want to jump in. We're talking mobile home parks heavy today. So if you could tell us the areas that you're investing in and really what you're focused on as far as the size of mobile home park and maybe some of just the high level points.
Yeah, we're buying mobile home parks, 50 lots or more in the middle of the United States. So from North Dakota down to Arkansas, across to Georgia and up to Pennsylvania, that middle core is what we're targeting. Looking at like secondary markets like your Indianapolis, your Sioux Falls, Des Moines, Iowa's, Fayetteville, Arkansas's. Those are the markets we're going after. And we're looking for mobile home parks that are owned by mom and pops that we can add value to. And mobile home park value add is pretty straightforward. There's a 70 lot park, there's 60 lots occupied and paying, and then there's 10 vacant lots that the mom and pop owner the home would move out and they just never invested the money to refill it. So they just sit vacant and we'll come in and bring homes in to set on those lots, and we'll bill back water and sewer because a lot of the landlords are including that, and just try to cut expenses to increase the income and ultimately get our investors double-digit returns.
Awesome. Having done this for a number of years, why settle on 50 plus? Like, where did that number come from? And how did you get to, I guess, your current buy box?
Yeah, so we do syndications where we pool together investors, and there's the threshold just needs to be enough for it to be worth it for everybody involved, right? The cash flow needs to be high enough. So we find that 50 lots or higher, gets the gross income up to a high enough level where everybody involved makes a decent chunk and it's worth it for everybody. We started out and we bought some smaller deals that were 30 lots or so, and they were harder to manage, right? The expense ratios are higher because your revenues are lower and you have some fixed costs, right? Like management and your taxes and insurance and things like that. So yeah, we just found that we can get the ideal returns at those 50 plus lot parks.
Okay. You said one of the value add items is moving homes on. So you're buying them, moving them on. Are you doing, a lot of guys that I talk to mobile home, they are like totally against having any park owned homes. And so do you do something on the back end? Are you rent to owning that home? Are you owner financing that home? Or are you just like,
that's exactly right. Yeah. So we'll bring in homes and then we'll do like a rent to own arrangement with the end resident. Yeah. So they are buying the home and eventually they will own the home and just be paying lot rent to be on the pad.
Okay. So yeah, you have two separate leases, or do you have rent to own single lease until they actually own it?
So it's not like an actual rent to own arrangement. It's called a rent credit arrangement. Just basically some Dodd-Frank, workarounds. Yeah. But then we'll have the lot lease agreement for the lot. Then we'll have a rent credit agreement for them, buying the home. And then, they basically will pay, the home owning entity and the real estate owning entity.
All right. How did you even get into this? let's go back a little bit more because I know some people who are doing it, like locally, I talked to them, some of my kids' friends' parents at school, they're talking to me about it. And I've seen it being around real estate for a long time. So how did you get into it? Was it like your first, like, I know this is growing up, I want to be a mobile home park operator. Like, what was it that got you into it, man?
Yeah, no, I thought I was destined for Wall Street. I was going to be an investment banker and went to school for business administration and finance. And that was kind of my path. And then I started in sales out of college, was selling to real estate agents. And I noticed, the commercial guys seemed to just really be the guys that were crushing it, that were making really good money. And so I was just naturally attracted to that. Started flipping houses on the side of my W-2 sales job, doing like 4 a year, nothing crazy, and doing some wholesaling, trying to find off-market houses. And then through that, I was mailing out yellow letters, got a lead for 2 mobile homes about an hour and a half north of where I live in Orlando, in like Ocala, the Villages. And it was a motivated seller, went up there, bought these 2 mobile homes for $1,100 a piece, came home, got on YouTube and typed in how to make money with mobile homes. And I found this video from a guy named Lonnie Scruggs, who wrote a book called Deals on Wheels. He basically teaches people how to buy mobile homes and then sell them on contract to an end buyer. And you're just basically creating mailbox money, that he called it, from selling the homes, not the mobile home park, just the homes themselves. So that's how I got into manufactured housing, was doing Lonnie deals. I did like 20 of those. And that's how I got out of the rat race, because I had enough money coming in that was offsetting my monthly expenses. So I was flipping houses, doing Lonnie deals on the side. And that's kind of how I started. I met a park owner then who started giving me homes in his park and became friends. And then he kind of mentored me and said, hey, this is how you syndicate. You should buy the whole park, the real estate. It's more scalable. There's tax benefits. You can get financing. And he basically taught me like the syndication model, where I could raise money for the down payment and improvements. And then I can, share a piece of the equity with the investor pool. And I just went all in on that once I learned that that was a thing.
So when was that? Like what time frame, year?
That was 2015.
Okay.
When I had that meeting with that mobile home park owner.
Yeah.
And after that, I paid $3,000 to go to a boot camp. And literally at the boot camp, I'm a Christian. I believe that God set this guy next to me who happened to be an executive at Goldman Sachs. And literally that guy was my first money partner. My first LP was that gentleman from Goldman Sachs who literally wrote me a check for $5 million. And we bought my first 5 mobile home parks were just me and him. And I still own all 5 of those to this day.
Yeah.
But then that helped me build a track record. And then since then, friends and family have wanted to invest in my deals. And now we've grown a portfolio of almost 50 parks.
You got a $5 million check from sitting next to a guy okay, we could have an entire show about just how that comes about.
It was a divine moment, divine intervention. Obviously there's hard work. Obviously there's taking initiative and making decisions, but there's things that happened in my journey that were outside of my control that I truly believe that God was like, hey, you need to meet Tony.
Yeah.
And him and I did those first 5 deals, and I moved on site to those parks and rehabbed them myself, moved the homes in, I was there, and those were a success. And then I had a track record that I could show, then I had aunts and uncles that were like, hey, here's 100,000, here's, I want to be in your next deal. And it just kind of compounded from there.
Hey everybody, Randall Declared here with a special shout out to our friends over at Envone. If you're looking to diversify your investment portfolio, you've got to go check them out. It's envone.com. It's a crowdfunding platform with a wide range of investment opportunities, things like real estate investing and even bourbon barrel investing. So check them out. Envone hosts our crowdfund. It's actually a single family real estate investment fund that we have launched with them. And we've had an awesome experience working with Levy and his team. They're super responsive, very quick to assist us with things that we need. And they have crowdfunding down to a science. Go ahead and check out episode 154, where Levy and I discuss crowdfunding in detail and how it can help you either invest or raise capital. And check this out. As a friend of the pod, launch your crowdfund with Envone, and you're going to get an exclusive 10% discount when you head over to envone.com/ABC, or simply call Levy and his team at 475-800-8716 and mention Agents Building Cash Flow. Go crush it. Happy investing. Talk to you later. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. That's incredible. I mean, that's why you go to a conference, I guess. One of the many reasons to network and talk to people and tell them. So, I mean, again, That's a very unique setup to meet somebody and then they give you that capital. So obviously you had something that you were doing. I don't know if it was like my ego's checked at the door. I'm here to learn. And this guy sees my enthusiasm. And so again, what do you think led to that happening?
I mean, he took a chance on me,
Okay.
at the end of the day. Like he took a risk, but I think like I showed him, some of my flips that I had done, and he knew that I had like the project management experience from doing that. But, and I showed him the Lonnie deals that I was doing. So he knew that I kind of knew basic, project management and construction. But I mean, and we started with one. We didn't just buy all five at the same time. We bought one park that was outside of St. Louis. That was 67 lots off market. I was cold calling. That's how I got that deal, got all the info, shared it with him, put a business plan together, and he committed to that one. And then when that one was successful, where we were able to return his money before, I think it was 22 months we owned it. And I had already rehabbed and refinanced and pulled out the initial money.
Yeah.
And then we went and did another one, and then, the same
Yeah.
thing. So it was, over the course of a couple of years, but yeah, I mean, he took a chance. 100%.
That's incredible. Yeah. No, that's incredible. Obviously, yeah, you had to go do the work. And so you found a deal. I just didn't know if he gave you money and he's like, you can do this.
Yeah, just
or like,
figure this out. No,
I have a deal and it's not a blind pool fund type deal. It's like, okay. Yeah.
And he was at the boot camp, so he had a general knowledge of like, hey, is this a good deal or not?
Yeah.
So I think that's helped.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's an awesome story, man. Getting that deal, getting the first one. And I love that you moved into the park to rehab them. I had a lender I was working with a long time ago, and he had this problem property in Corpus Christi, which is like 2 hours south of us. And he's like, I just need to do something with this. Like, I don't even know what to do with it. And I went down there, did the same thing. It was like, I'll solve your problem. Went and took care of it for him. Moved in. He's like, that was insane. Anyway, it's just one of those stories. Like if you put in the effort and you show that, then it pays off tenfold. So it's very cool that you moved into the park and you were there.
Thank you.
Awesome.
At the time it was very nerve wracking, and there's a stigma, right, around mobile home parks in general. And that's the elephant in the room. But I think when you're there and you're living there, which I lived there for 4 months, you meet the people, you meet the residents. Like these are not 8 Mile. These are not like the mobile home parks you see on Cops. Most mobile home parks are just nice subdivisions for just lower income families. Like they're normal people. They're not like, I think there's just a stigma. They're like, oh, there's just so much crime in these things, and it's just such a bad place, which couldn't be, further from the truth.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. No Trailer Park Boys like jokes or anything need to have. I'm sure you've seen that.
There's apartment complexes. There's housing subdivisions that are trashed, right? Like, and there's mobile home parks that are trashed, right? It's all based on the management and all of that. But like most mobile home parks are not that, right?
Yeah.
Like most of them are actually, fairly nice. And in the Midwest, the stigma of living in a mobile home is not as strong as it is in the Southeast. In my opinion, like it's more normalized. Hey, you go to college, you get married, you live in a mobile home, you save up until you can buy a house, and then you go buy a house, and that's just more normalized and affordable, way more affordable.
Yeah. We were just talking, again, the guest I just had on, we were talking about affordability and how they're trying to figure out and solve that problem. It's such a difficult problem to solve, but mobile homes, I think, it's definitely one of the avenues that leads there. Okay, so let's talk Lonnie deals real fast before we move on, because your strategy was buy them, and then did you have to move them to a park?
No,
So you
they're
just
already in the park.
Got it. Okay.
Buy them. The sellers are very motivated to sell these things because they're stuck with lot rent.
Yep.
So the guys that I bought these 2 homes from, he was paying $600 a month a piece for lot rent plus utilities, because he had to pay like the minimum utilities, even though utilities were shut off.
Yeah.
So he was very motivated to get rid of these things, and he just wanted to get rid of them. So he sold them to me for $1,100 each. And these are like vinyl sided shingle roof homes. They probably, I just knew they had to cost like at least 20 grand each to build these things. So I knew I was getting a deal, and he just wanted rid of them. It was like a probate situation.
Yeah.
So bought them. I paid the lot rent for a couple months while I cleaned them out. There was a bunch of like old furniture and, weird stuff in it. So I just cleaned it out, fixed some of the holes in the walls and things like that. Didn't even paint it, just cleaned it really well. Put it on Craigslist, which back at the time was like the go-to place to sell these things.
For sure. Yeah.
But now, Facebook Marketplace is, the new Craigslist.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like 25 people reach out the first day. And then they go get approved at the park, fill out a background check, get approved at the park. And then I sold them, I think it was $2,000 down and $250 a month for 5 years. That's what I sold each of them for.
Yeah.
So then I had that 250 coming in and I already got my money back from the down payment.
Yep.
So it's anybody could do it. You just have to take initiative. You got to get out there and you got to catch them quick because they do sell fast.
Yeah. I bought $1,000. This lady needed to get rid of hers. I paid $1,000, very similar. They moved out, left, and then I just owner financed somebody for like $3,000. It was not a nicer home, right? But they gave me $1,000 down. I was like, okay, I'm net,
You're full.
monthly cash flow coming in. She moved in and there were like cats in the walls. Like it was like turned into this.
Rough.
That one turned into this whole thing. But that strategy and that model, I love that model because I've done that a lot on different types of assets.
And if you're not starting out with a big capital base, like I didn't have, mommy and daddy money, right? Like I didn't have like a big nest egg I could fall back on. Like I was starting from scratch. I knew that being a landlord was like a pathway to financial freedom. Rich dad, poor dad was in the back of my head, but like I didn't have the money to go buy an apartment complex or something like that. But this was a very low basis way to get into something that was going to provide, residual income. And I'm a fan of that model.
Yeah, I am too. So, all right, you are buying these things. So one, I want to get into like the value add programs that you're doing. Maybe give it a second. First, start with you went from those deals into these larger deals with your backer, right? Goldman's your golden ticket. And then you got friends and family on the deal. So I'm kind of curious, like how did either the financing or the partnership model change from going solo, spending your own cash? Now you have a partner. Was that a 50-50 split or was there some kind of like promote setup compared to what you have now? Just so that a lot of what I always want to talk about is, we are earning commissions and what do we do with those commissions as agents? Like we need to invest them somewhere. And so what does the return profile look like for this type of asset class,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Geez, where do I start? So my first investor, I didn't have a track record, right? So I offered him a 10% preferred return. So he got the first 10% that the property generated, that the cash flow generated. And then he got 50% of the cash flow on the back end after he got his money back. So he got 10% on his money while it was out. Then we refinanced, he got his money back. The 10% stopped, but then he got 50% of the cash flow into perpetuity after that. And then I got the other 50%, but I didn't have to put any money up. So, his money was prioritized, first. And then after the fact, after I was able to return his money, we split it on the back end. And on that deal, I didn't even take a management fee because I was like, hey, I'm not going to take a management fee. Like my equity is going to be my benefit. So that's how I set up my first deal and managed it for free for a few years and then got his money back. And then it was, we were good. At this point, my deal structure is different. I have a broader investor base and my investor base really just wants like as close to a guarantee of a double-digit return that they can get, versus leaving their money in a CD or something like that, earning 4%. So, we have a 10% preferred return where they're getting 10% on their money. And then after that, depending on the deal, there's a split of the cash flow after they get their money back plus 10%. Then there's a split of the cash flow after that, which usually we try to refi our deals in 5 years and return that initial equity. So that's kind of how we set up our deals from like an LP GP standpoint, but it's always prioritizing the LP money. It aligns us with our LPs. I invest as an LP in every one of our deals. I'm typically the person putting in the most money. And it just gets you a good return on your money. Also, the tax benefits aren't talked about enough. Mobile home parks, RV parks, and golf courses have like some of the highest depreciation out of all commercial real estate assets because they're mostly land improvements. So you're able to depreciate typically 70 to 80% of the purchase price. And for mobile home parks, that's over like 17 years. So if you buy something for $1 million, you can take 700,000 and, spread that out over 17 years. And that's how much that you can add to your P&L as a phantom expense to offset your taxable income every year, approximately. Obviously, this is subject to change with tax laws and things like that, but that's how it is right now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't know that's how you're doing it. And I was going to ask you about cost seg, if there's anything that you do on that front to accelerate the depreciation, or if it's just a straight line 17-year land.
It is right now, I think it's 60% this year. They've been phasing the 100% bonus depreciation, which was even better, down 80% and 60%, 40%, I think. And then it's going to, the bonus depreciation will phase out. But we're still getting cost segs on our parks. I mean, it's just really helps us offset and get our investors, a negative number on that K1, which helps offset some other income, or it can help offset other income.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that because again, I always want to know the structure. Are you typically doing accredited? Or are you doing 506Bs? Are you doing crowdfund? Like, how are you?
We've done
structuring
both
it?
506B and 506C. So 506B is like just friends and family. 506C is accredited investors only, where we're like marketing for deals and for investors to come join us.
Mhm.
We've done both. It just depends on the deal and kind of how much capital we need to raise.
Yeah. So this leads in perfectly to talking about what you have, the transition from those initial deals to kind of what your portfolio looks like now and what you guys are targeting. Are you trying to go out and buy $100 million parks? Does that even exist? Like what's a high end, low end,
Yeah,
like
they definitely exist. Yeah, our model is pretty consistent. We're more of the sniper approach instead of the shotgun approach.
Yep.
In my first couple of years, it was kind of a shotgun approach. Let's just send out a lot of letters and cold call a lot of owners. And, we bought some smaller parks that now looking back, our expense ratios are higher on those smaller parks. We just have, less revenue coming in. So to offset some of our fixed expenses. But now, it's more 50 lots or above in those secondary markets, buying direct from mom and pops. We're cold calling owners. 99% of our properties have been bought off market direct from the mom and pops. And we sleep well at night knowing, hey, we're buying this from a baby boomer who wants to retire. There's 10 or 20 vacant lots. They're including water and sewer in their rent, and we can bill that back. We use a system called like sub-meters called Metron Farnier that we put under each home. So we track the water that's going in and we can bill them for that. And it helps us identify if, like, for example, the flapper goes bad in a toilet and the toilet's just running water all day long. And then, in some parks, the landlord doesn't notify the tenant. And next thing you know, they have a $400 bill for the month for water. And then the tenant is having affordability issues. We're looking to do a service for our residents by saying, hey, within 24 hours, Metron Farnier sends us an email and says, hey, lot 12 has very high usage compared to the norm. There's something going on here. And then our on-site manager goes and knocks on their door, gives them a notice, says, hey, something's going on in here. You're using a lot more water than normal. And maybe they have guests in town or something like that. Okay. But a lot of times the toilet's running and we help them. We'll have a local plumber come and let's just replace your flapper for $15 and save you, a lot of wasted water. It's good for the environment, good for the resident, good all around.
For sure. And I knew that there was leak detection equipment like that you could put on. I didn't know that it was tracking and you could use it for like sub metering, almost like rebilling purposes. So that's fantastic that it tells you the usage, not just like it's higher than normal.
And that was one of the big areas where it could eat up a whole month's cash flow, right? Because think of these are affordable housing, low income tenants, right? They need to get their brakes replaced on their car. And then that same month, their toilet flapper breaks and they have a $400 water bill.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they get in a bad situation and they just leave. They just abandon the home and they're like, I got to move back in with my parents. I can't afford all of this. Where if we can get ahead of it and help prevent some of those lost expenses, it just does wonders. It helps the resident and helps us.
All right, let's talk about this then, because I want to get into the value add approach and some underwriting, like what you're looking at, some assumptions that you guys make. So, I mean, you've touched on them, but you're going into a park and let's say that it's a 50 pad park and 20 are vacant, right? Completely gone. What is your cost to get 20 new homes? Like what's a per home cost? And then how long does it typically take you to fill that thing? And what is your cash flow on a per unit basis typically like you're targeting? Because I honestly don't know like the return profile that a park should be kicking off to say, hey, this is a good deal. Is it a 10 cap? Is it like a lot of questions, man. A lot of questions.
Yeah. So typically, we like used homes and new homes. New homes to bring one in and get it set up and everything's probably around 45 to 50,000, which isn't bad. And there's chattel lenders out there that you can use to finance those. Used homes, you can typically infill for 20 to 25,000 on a vacant lot, a used home, but there's risks with that, right? The home condition, you may need to rehab it. A lot of older homes can't be transported and the newer homes are, better quality and you can get a better quality tenant typically. So it just depends. You have to analyze the park, the demographics and the median home price in the area to see, hey, are people going to be able to afford to buy a new home or is this a used home market? And in most of our secondary Midwestern markets, we usually go with used homes, but good quality pitched roof used homes. From a return standpoint, we're looking at, can we get this to a 9 cap or higher by the end of year 2? So it's, we're looking at what do we need to do here? What can we do to trim expenses or increase revenues to get this to a 9 cap or higher by the end of year 2? And then you're typically using local banks for our financing and doing a 5 to 7 year fixed rate. And then our whole goal is to refinance with agency debt. They're the best debt you can get in the asset class. That's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And, they're government sponsored lenders that are basically incentivizing you to invest in mobile home parks to preserve affordable housing. Because there is an issue with mobile home parks where a lot of them are being redeveloped and torn down and raised into other asset classes because they have that multifamily zoning that they'll tear the mobile homes down and build multifamily apartments, grade A apartment complexes that are not affordable housing. So it's like one of the only asset classes where there's more being torn down every year than there are new ones being built, because it's very hard to get new mobile home parks zoned, because of NIMBY, not in my backyard, and other initiatives against it. So it's unique in that aspect. But yeah, that's kind of the return profile we're looking for, Randall.
Got it. Okay. And so are you buying mainly in cities that have NIMBYism, or is it like outside?
NIMBYism's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. Sure. It's crazy. I mean, in Texas, there's some new parks being built, like in the county where like the zoning's a little bit easier and things like that. But that's
what I mean. Yeah.
Elsewhere, it's very hard in the city to get something, zoned and approved and to get the utility infrastructure, like to get city sewer, city water, which is more valuable. It's very hard to do that. Where like in the county, you put in a wastewater treatment plant or septic, and those parks are worth less, but you can get them zoned outside.
Yeah,
outside city limits.
Are you doing any development?
We're not. Yeah, we still believe that for the next 5 years, there's lower hanging fruit on existing mom and pop owned mobile home parks, because like 70% of the mobile home parks, something around there, are still owned by mom and pops that only own like 1 or 2 assets, 1 or 2 parks. So they're not sophisticated. They're not running it. Professional management isn't running these things. They're doing it themselves. And there's a lot of meat on the bone typically, value add wise, if we can buy direct.
Yeah. All right. So then I've heard you talk about the expense ratios quite a bit. So, multifamily, you can get 50 to 55% expenses on a ratio. So on a mobile home park, what are you typically seeing or trying to target when you are looking at your underwrite?
Yeah, some states, have higher taxes than others, but typically we're looking around 35 to 40% expenses is kind of what we're proforming that we can get it to.
And the biggest, aside from taxes, like what are you seeing as the biggest expense that?
Taxes and management. I mean, this is affordable housing. So property management, we typically have an on-site manager that lives in the park and is like a resident manager that keeps an eye on things. And then off-site management kind of dictates, hey, deliver this notice, or creating statements and taking payments, those type of things.
Got it. Okay. And so getting back to the value add, when you're going out and buying these parks, biggest, easiest low-hanging fruit, is it adding the homes? I mean, that seems like a big expense, so it may not be the easiest, but...
And it's labor intensive to infill and fill the vacant lots. I would say the biggest value add that's like right away, no brainer, is the water sewer bill back. Yeah. A lot of landlords like just include that in lot rent, and lot rents are low also compared to like how apartment rents have gone up. Lot rents are on average across the country, I think like $350, $400 a month, in the markets that we're buying in. So, lot rents are low and they're including water sewer. Well, nobody, most apartments everywhere is billing back for utilities for the water sewer usage. So we can go in and drop our expenses typically by like 5 to 10% of our gross revenues by just billing that back off of usage. And then it also conserves water. We see that the total consumption drops by like 33% when we bill it back compared to when the park just included it free for everybody.
Yeah. Somebody just leaves the water running. Yeah, we had duplexes and some things like that. And we have, hey, we'll take care of the water and electric. And it just turns into like windows open, doors open. We got the AC running all day. The day we turned it into hey, this is on you. Yeah. Shocking. It's like, yeah, it's obvious. But, at the time we thought we were doing the right thing. Okay. So let's look at this as though, I've never bought one of these, right? So if I'm going out and I'm shopping around, I'm literally on Craigslist right now looking at all kinds of stuff, right? And I wanted to buy a park, or I wanted to go direct to seller, even take it back that far. What are some of the best strategies for finding the lot owners and going direct to them, either by calling, like what's the best lead source and how to contact them?
So I think you want to pick an area, right? I know you're in San Antonio, great area. Pick an area, and then get on like the GIS for your county and search mobile home parks. Try to find that like zoning or that layer and find all the mobile home parks and then create a list of all of them that, meet your criteria. Maybe you want ones that are 30 lots or more, right? And then create a list of all of those and get the owner name and get their, address of where they get their tax bill. And then typically you can go, there's a website for free. I think it's called Fast People Search Now. Yeah, fastpeoplesearch.com. It's like a free website where you can type in person's name and their city, state, where they live, and it'll pop up their phone numbers, like any of the phone numbers that they've had. Like it'll free skip trace. So I would just start there and then just send like a mass text to all of them that says, hey, just wanted to reach out about your mobile home park and see if you'd be open to an offer. And then just see if anybody reaches back out, and maybe just, text them, consistently, and maybe try to call them to just start a conversation and build rapport. A lot of people aren't going to want to sell the first day you reach out to them. But if you just build that rapport, you talk to them, over the course of a year or two, if they meet the profile of a baby boomer generation, chances are they're going to sell in the next 5 or so years. And, if you've built that rapport, you have that relationship with them and they have your contact info, they'll call you. That happens to us all the time. Or like they weren't ready whenever we called them a couple years ago. We sent them a letter so they have all of our contact info. Now they're calling us and saying, hey, it's time. I want to move to Florida and retire.
Okay. Good advice. I always like to get down to the nitty gritty and figure out like what you're doing to make it make sense or to get direct to the seller. Are you doing self-storage?
We do a little bit of self-storage. We bought some in 21. We bought 11 facilities in 21 and 22. And we're actually exiting that asset class. We have 2 that are under contract to be sold right now. And then we have 3 others that, are ultimately not doing great. Self-storage is kind of in a drought right now. And with interest rates being higher, less people are moving. So a lot of people don't realize this, but most self-storage users that are renting storage are in transit. They're like moving. And that's where a lot of our customers come from. So yeah, occupancy levels were high during COVID, like people were moving more and things were good. So yeah, that was we could do a whole podcast on that, just my learning experience and being very granular with my management because things weren't going great. But yeah, thankfully the ones we're selling will make a nice profit off of, not as high as we had hoped, but the 3 that we're not able to sell because they're underwater right now, we just got to roll up our sleeves and get to work on those because we got to do more marketing to get more move-ins and to really increase our revenue. That's our main focus right now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just see that it's on my list of notes. I just didn't know if you were heavy into it, still going hard, because to me, that market got saturated. A lot of institutional buyers went into it and institutional money went into it. And it just seemed like something's got to happen here. But
there's good deals. And the things with storage is like when it's hot, it's hot. Like when we had low interest rates and people were moving a lot, it was hot. Occupancy rates averaged like above 95%, and you can raise rents. Like the way rents work is kind of like apartments, but it's faster, right? These are month-to-month leases. So when you have high occupancy, you have high demand, your rates go up, right? It's like it's dynamic pricing. But when occupancy and your demand is flat or it's kind of leveling off, you can't raise your prices. You're moving people in at promos. You're trying to match the big guys, the public storage, the extra space. You're trying to match their pricing and promos to get people in the door. And then it's a revolving door. Like every month you can expect to lose 10% of your tenants and you got to bring in another 10% to replace them. Yeah. So if you're not ready for that, it's a lot to keep up with, and with mobile home parks, it's like the opposite. They're very sticky. Like 95% of mobile homes are never moved from the initial spot that they're installed in, because they're not that mobile. They cost like $5,000 to $10,000 to move a mobile home, even just 1,000 feet, because you got to unhook all the utilities, block level tie down, and move it all the way over there. And it's expensive and requires certain permitting and all that. So parks with the sticky tenant base definitely gives it an advantage over self-storage, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you have parks that you are still owning some of the homes, even if they're...
We do.
Yeah. So do you try to shy away from that, or do you try to put everybody on the rent-to-own program?
Like with some of our new homes that we bring in and we have loans on them, we're not allowed to do the RTO program. So we'll just straight rent them, on annual leases for a few years until we pay those homes off. And then we can, sell them outright to someone that like gets financing. So we've done that on occasion. And then also Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allow for up to 20% park-owned homes. So having a few rentals that are those newer homes that are still under warranty, helps us increase our cash flow, because there's typically less maintenance on a brand new home compared to an older vintage.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk financing in general. Just how are you getting, like, what does the debt look like when you're going direct to the bank? What's the LTV? What are they offering you? And you said 5 years, give or take, is when you're refinancing out into agency. So just kind of curious about one, the setup, the front end financing, and then what it looks like to go agency, what kind of terms they're giving you as far as LTV and rates that you're seeing these days.
Yeah, typically we'll go in with a local bank. They'll do 70 to 75% LTV, and rates right now are around 7.5% typically, with a 20 to 25-year amortization and a 5-year balloon, or like 5-year fixed rate. And then it'll either, you can get the rate to change, to a variable at 5 years, or you can balloon the note. That's typically what we see. And then when we go, and that's recourse debt, that's an important thing to note.
Yeah.
And then when we go to refinance into agency debt, it turns into non-recourse debt, which basically means your personal liability is off of you if things go bad, and they're taking more of the property as the collateral instead of the property and your financial net worth and well-being. So that's a big differential. But then the terms are typically 10-year fixed rate and lower rates, probably 5.6%, and interest only for maybe 5 of the 10 years, or full 10 years of interest only based on how much leverage you take. And you can get up to 75% LTV on the agency debt as well. So you come in, you buy something, you invest another $1 million into infilling homes, putting new roads, fixing it up. Then you take it to the agency, and you can pull out another 75% at the new higher value now that you've increased the income and done these improvements to make it a better property.
When you're going agency, what are you seeing? Obviously, it's going to be vary by region wherever you're buying, but like, what value are they giving you on a cap rate basis for the NOI for your refinance?
It really depends. The last few years when rates were lower, we'd see things as low as 5 or 6% cap rates. We haven't done one in a little while, but I would assume that those have gone up to, 7 or 8% cap rates at this point. But, using a nationwide appraisal firm that understands the asset class of mobile home parks, they typically will give you an income method, and they will give you a good multiple on, the asset versus like the small mom and pop appraiser that the credit unions use.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Again, like a ton of stuff that we could spend another like 2 hours talking about, but it's like what's your advice, I guess? Somebody trying to break in, somebody trying to do it, somebody looking to invest. What would your takeaway be that you'd want to leave somebody with?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, do you have the time, one, to do it yourself, right? Because if you could do it yourself, you can make the phone calls, you can get hands-on, you can create the list, and you can follow up with the owners. You can get a bigger piece of the pie. You can buy your own park, potentially. Or would it be better for you to partner with someone? I just think you should really get educated up front, go to a boot camp or something like that. Like the Frank and Dave boot camp is like the most well-known educational event for the asset class. Get educated, that's going to be first and foremost. Or, partner with someone that is an operator that does this, that can do the proper due diligence. Because I think the biggest risk in buying mobile home parks is going to be that the utility infrastructure by far. That's like the biggest thing that you need to understand is the utility infrastructure is very expensive, especially like wastewater treatment plants. You buy a 30-lot park that's on a wastewater treatment plant. The treatment plant goes bad because it has a 50-year life expectancy. You could have to put $600,000 to $1 million into that park to buy a new wastewater treatment plant if it goes bad. So there's risks like that you really got to be aware of. We camera the sewer lines before we buy a property. So due diligence is key. And literally like every park we've bought, we've added something to our due diligence checklist because we've made mistakes and we've learned from those, and we've added that to check things before we buy. And then, just confirming the income and getting hands-on and visiting the asset is going to be important. But I think if you're going to spend time on anything, understanding the utility infrastructure is going to be the most important thing. Because if you have water leaks every month, and they're underground, in some northern states, the water lines can be 10 feet underground, so that's going to cost you like $5,000 every time to fix one of those water main leaks. And that'll eat up your cash flow quick. So just understanding that a lot of these mobile home parks were built 50 plus years ago. and making sure that you're doing proper due diligence. And if you do it yourself, or partner with someone that does know the due diligence process so that you don't get into trouble.
Yeah. Second that. That's awesome advice. Look, man, I think we wrap it there. I'm going to leave all your contact info in the show notes. It sounds like you have offerings periodically that are coming up, and you have things that people can invest in and or reach out to you if they have questions about how to do this. So again, appreciate you jumping on, sharing your information, talking about your business, what you're doing. So good luck in the second half of the year here, man.
Thank you so much, Randall. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the website's just keelteam.com. That's KEEL, team, like a basketball team.com. Feel free to fill out the contact form. Would love to connect with you, even if you're just kind of interested in learning more about mobile home parks as an asset class.
Perfect. All right, guys, catch you on the next episode. Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.